I've been craving popcorn all week, but it's finding the time to do it because I have a certain way that I make it. First of all, it has to be air popped, like my auntie used to make it for me a long time ago. I'm talking like I was 10 years old and I had just been introduced to both air popped and microwave popcorn. So I prefer air popped. Now, child, I have gotten fancy. Where auntie used to put a whole stick of butter in there, I have now added garlic, flavored olive oil to my butter. My toppings are powdered garlic, roasted garlic, and don't forget the garlic, baby. I add a drizzle of honey, organic honey, with a sprinkle of Maldon smoked salt. Just a sprinkle, just to keep that blood pressure in check. It's my favorite snack that puts me in the mood for deep editing work, especially as tedious as developmental editing. Try it. There's something about crunchy that helps you to dig into the writing work that would be required. And it allows you to fall into a place of deep concentration and focus. When I first started um, writing That Day in August, my new novel, I pantsed 20 chapters and I was surprised that I got that far. But what I found after a while, as I got deeper into the novel, characters were coming about and I was just kind of, putting them in as placeholders. But it became really necessary for me to start to plot. And in that plotting, as I said, up until the 21st chapter, I was just throwing characters in, placeholders, placeholders, placeholders. And even up until then, like as I was developing my characters, sort of their backstory, I found that when I finished the novel, I had I had 47 characters identified in this story that it was time for me to really understand their place. Um, and so I found that as I'm going through this developmental phase, it was important for me to understand the characters, their roles within the story, if they needed to come back, if their story continues, if they fade off, because sometimes characters fade off, or if I even needed them at all. So it was this part of it was really, really important. And I developed a strategy to help me to sort of differentiate one character from the other. As I told y'all, I am old school. There are so many other programs that, as I call myself a baby author, but there's so many other programs that help to do what what I'm describing here, but it was what helped me. Like I'm old school, I'm Excel, I'm PowerPoint, I'm org charts, like I'm straight old school. But like in an Excel spreadsheet, along with, like I told you when I was going through the story, my last episode, where I was going through the story and really going for feel. This time I skimmed. I didn't read the chapters per se, but I skimmed the chapters just so that I could understand, as you know, as the meme says, who all gonna be over there, you know, like I had to understand who all was showing up in these chapters that I had written. And so, as I said, I discovered there were 47 chapters 47 characters, I'm sorry, that was identified in these identify in these chapters. And so I really needed to understand their loop in and their loop out and all of that. Like I really needed to understand that. So just reading from my notes here, some of the things that I really need to understand was, one, who was the character, right? Who are these people, right? Two, it was the age. Like what was their age? Like I had to identify that my main character, Callahan, was 44. And because she was falling in love with a younger man, I had to identify that he was 36. But it was these, understanding the ages because, people do math. People are smarter than me. I'm not a math person, but having to understand like the age of each of the characters was important. What role did they play in the story? Like in the beginning, there is Shone who appears in the story. And one of the things I found, which I have to figure this out, she never appears again. She has very much of a place in the top of the story of That Day in August, but she doesn't appear again. And even as I am, gearing up for, rewrites, I'm like, does she come back? But I really, like, there's a part of me now that's like, well, she doesn't really play a key role in the novel after that point. But I can see a reader going, well, whatever happened to, understanding the roles. Then there's understanding their jobs. Like, people just not, they not like Tommy, right? You don't have a job, man. You know, Martin. So so having to understand like what job did they have. Like my main character, she was the chief of staff at a university in a department. you know uh Vincent Laurent, who was the main male character, he was all things, film and cinematography and photography. He was all things that. So understanding people's roles, job roles, was important. Any notes, like as I was going through, like I said, an example for Shone, who is one of the characters, like I had to understand, like, does she come back? And if she does, and that was one of the notes I wrote, like, does she come back? And if she does, why? And she may not, but I have to ask the question as I'm, will do at least two more read throughs of the novel. And then I think the final thing was any questions. So, like, for my particular main female character, she has parents that passed. And her auntie took over, parentage for her. But like asking questions like, how did they die? And what's the rest of her family dynamic? And why doesn't the family dynamic kick in, once she, you know, before the auntie takes over? Like it's those types of questions that, and so in that last column, it's like some questions that, will naturally come up in yourself as they will come up in the reader of like what actually happens to to a character, or and it helps to really, even if it's a line or two. So I'm not looking forward to that part because it questions my writing even more. And as Erica Badu says, artists are sensitive about their ish, right? So to question it anymore, I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. So yes. So, but going through that and adding those as categories is really going to help me as I, post the editor getting me back the manuscript will help me to round out where I need to round out the characters and who they are in relation to the story. because I'm a visual person, as most people are. I think most writers are visual. We have to look to write, right, or see to write. I took it a step further just so that I can really truly understand who my main female character was and who my main character was. So Callahan, the main female character, she had, as you'll see here, she had a plethora of people that was connected to her and connected to her story. And so I put it in a PowerPoint, the organogram or the organization chart. Some of you are familiar with that. Like I said, there are other programs that do this that are fancier. And I have to say, I haven't ventured off because I still feel like I'm just learning the regular the regular things of how to develop my own process. But this worked for me. Doing an organogram, a character organogram, worked for me. And so I kind of charted it out so that I can really see who was in the female main character entourage and who was in the main male character entourage. And it really helped me to understand um, the different characters that wove in and out of the story. And it also, like, as I provided my editor with the final, the edited manuscript, I also included this chart so that they can be familiar as they're coming up to these different characters. They can be familiar with the characters at hand, but also can make better recommendations for how to say, this particular character needs to be rounded out a little bit more. This particular character, I'm not sure if you need, but they'll at least have a reference point. But this is a process that I will continue to add because I think what I found in writing that day in August, I found that I really, really do both pants and plot. I think even when you're plotting, you still that pantsing element still comes through because because I found in this process, like, I'll be writing something and then something to spin off, and it's like, oh wait, that's a thing, and I have to dedicate a chapter to that spin-off. So but this particular process really, really helped um adding this sort of character map where I could just really see who all the characters were and who they were related to and why, and whether they were major characters, minor characters, or just mentioned on the side. That was so very helpful. And it's something that I will continue to do over and over again. Will you consider adding an Excel spreadsheet where you kind of plot out your or look at your characters across the novel, or even going the extra step of creating an organogram or sort of an org chart of your characters that appear in your story? I know for me, like, it really was a game changer because there's oftentimes when I don't really understand um all of the characters that I'm weaving through, especially and even your best plotting. Like, I have plotted novels and or at least my first novel, and I knew the main characters, but there were people that showed up, and so being able to add this extra step was like definitely a game changer. And it's something that I really, really deeply think that I'm going to continue. Now, one of the things I'm going to do and make a point to do is to research other programs that do all of this in one. I'm an Excel girl. I'm a Microsoft, better said, I'm a Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office girl. So that's what I know. And so sometimes for me, being in this 2.0 perimenopausal phase of life, I'm kind of like, you know what, the extras, I can't do extra. I cannot do extra. So, but I will research to find out what's the simplest where I'm able to put, inspirational photos, sort of a little mood board and, all, the characterization and all of those things. And also, the plotting of it. But right now, Microsoft Word is working for me. I have to say, as I said before in my videos, you have to find what works for you. No one can teach you how to write. No one can teach you how to edit. You do it by doing it, like, period. So, anyway, this is part 3 of the of my editing process that I'm just discovering. I'm discovering what works for me, and along that discovery was number 1, like reading for pleasure, just reading the novel for pleasure. Number 2 was just going through and reading it again for feel, for that feel, that whatever the genre that I'm a romantasy sort of, magical realism girl. So I, created a rubric that, as I read through each chapter to see if it was hitting certain significators. And the third step is just to understand the characters throughout the story. And, again, it's really been a game changer for me. So stay tuned. There's lots more to come in this process. I feel like it's going to be like an 8-stage process. Just for editing, there's the writing, the first draft, and then the editing phase, and then the final things, which I'm going to take you along the ride. So anyway, thank you so much for joining, and I cannot wait to see you soon. Bye.